Plus, former Senator Tom Coburn joins the table. Yeah,
you think he's going to have his beard or not?
I don't know, but he will not mince words. We know that.
Won't.
We'll be right back. And joining us now, given the news, it's good timing, I guess, former Republican Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma, who recently joined the Convention of States Project. We'll talk about that. Mike Barnacle and the Washington Post's Ann Guerin are back with us as well.
Tom Coburn, always a grim reminder when we get news like this out of Afghanistan or Iraq. And we have a lot of foreign policy people in Washington, D.C. that are talking about a need to engage in Syria, a need to engage in Iraq, a need to engage more across the world. But Americans are exhausted, and every time something like this happens, don't you hear that from constituents and former constituents?
Yeah, I think they do. I think out in the heartland, most people would like to see it all go away. It's not going to go away. This is a real problem in the future, not just now. And this is one of the side effects of radical Islam. You know, here you're on a team trying to protect somebody, and all of a sudden one of the team decides you're the enemy.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it is a difficult nest.
Well, it's very good to have you back on the show.
It's good to be here
How's
with
it
you.
feel after leaving for a while?
Good.
Transition
no withdrawal,
okay?
No withdrawal whatsoever.
No withdrawal? I don't believe
my wife is having trouble used to me being home, but I'm not having any trouble. It's really enjoyable to actually have some freedom of your own time and set your own priorities, and so it's been great.
There are a lot of people I would say, do you feel more free to speak? I don't apply that
I don't apply that to
because
Tom.
you never minced words. Tell us about the Convention of States Project.
Well, I got involved in one of the reasons I left the Senate is I didn't think you can fix what's wrong with our country in the Senate. I mean, that's a pretty negative statement, but I actually believe that. And our founders were really wise. They put an article into the Constitution, Article 5, that said when everything's going the way most republics go, we're going to give you a tool with which you can bring us back from the edge. And if you poll the American people, most people are disgusted with Washington. They like some of the benefits that come out of Washington, but most people don't like the rhetoric. They don't like the tone. They don't like what's going on. And I personally don't like the loss of freedom that I've noticed over the last 30 or 40 years.
Are there any candidates on the horizon that you think could impact the problem that you're talking about right now?
I guess I'm not sure I'm good enough to judge that, and I shouldn't prejudge them. I think we really lack real leadership in our country to talk about the real problems. I mean, every news show talks about the presidential race, but you know what? We added $5.6 trillion in unfunded liabilities last year to our kids' backs. $5.6 trillion. That's what we increased their debt last year and what they're going to owe.
So how much of this problem that you're talking about, the polarization in the Senate being unable to get anything done, it's better to work from outside the Senate to get something done rather than inside the Senate, how much of this problem is rooted in the enormous amounts of money that have to be raised to run for the United States Senate, and what could be done about that?
You know, I'm not sure it's money related. I think it's career related. I mean, when you talk to senators privately and say, you know, this is the fact, and here's what we need to do, and they'll say, yeah, I know, but I can't do that because I can't get reelected if I do that. And so it really is not a matter of money, Mike. It's a matter of, you know, whether or not anybody has any calcium in their spine, and most of them don't. They're not going to fix what's wrong with our country. They're not going to address. I mean, the perfect chance would have been for President Obama, starting his second term, to say, we're going to fix Medicare and Social Security. We're going to take the Republicans and the Democrats. We're not going to listen to all this pointing fingers. Let's actually solve the real problem. We have $160 trillion worth of unfunded liabilities right now. That's $500,000 per man, woman, and child in this country.
And
is there anything that any presidential candidate can say now about the problem you've just identified that will resonate with voters? I mean, should candidates be saying, I'm the one who can work across the aisle. I'm the one who can do, just as you suggested.
I feel like I've heard all that before.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because you're hearing the candidates actually do the opposite right now. In large measure, certainly Hillary Clinton is saying, you know, she's running against the Republican Congress, and a lot of the Republicans themselves seem to be criticizing partisanship and sort of ossification in Washington. I just wonder, is that something the voters are going to expect of them to come out and start saying what they would do to solve that problem?
Gosh, you know, I have a lot of confidence in the American people. I think if you had a a candidate that stood up and said, look, here's what's getting ready to happen to us. Here's our unfunded liabilities. Here's our debt. We need to be addressing these issues if we want our children to have a great future. You know, the Federal Reserve isn't going to be in control of interest rates. The bond buyers are going to be in control of interest rates, and that's not far off. And so when the bid-to-cover ratio on a 10-year bond starts shrinking, all of a sudden interest rates are going to be out of the control of the Federal Reserve. And the consequences of our profligate spending will then cause us to have $1 trillion a year just in interest costs.
Is there a candidate on the Republican side that gives you hope that maybe he or she could carry that message?
I haven't actually thought about it because I hate presidential politics until 3 or 4 months before it starts.
I know, but it's one thing to say what the country needs. It's another thing. We have to pick someone who can do this.
I haven't heard anybody voice that.
Nobody stands out to you. Oh my God!
Well, I mean the thing is, we've talked about it time and time again.
Yeah.
I mean, and you've heard, unfortunately, you've heard in speeches me say it a zillion times. Medicare and Medicaid is the story. You've got people running around going, we're going to cut funding for PBS, we're going to cut this, we're going to cut... It just doesn't matter anymore. When Tom and I were there, you could cut transportation, you could cut this, you could cut that, Mika. It mattered then. It doesn't matter when every dime that comes into Washington, D.C. in 5 years is going to go to Medicare and Medicaid and interest on the debt.
Yeah.
That's right.
Everything else, guess what? Everything else is a footnote, and yet no presidential no person running will talk about really going and reforming and saving Medicare and Medicaid.
So how do you fix that? The way you fix that is a convention of the states that says we're going to balance our budget.
There we go.
That's, the states get to decide this, not the federal government.
Right.
We're going to balance our budget. We're going to limit the power and reach and scope of the federal government and restore the sovereignty that was intended for the states. You know, I'd remind you that the states created the federal government. The federal government did not create the states. And our founders, if you read through their documents and their sayings and read the Constitution, their definition and intentions were far away from what they intended for this republic to survive. So we can cheat history. I believe we have a great future. But we need leadership to do that, and I've not seen that yet.
Ending on a hopeful note, and also good news on you're feeling good?
Doing well. Thank you
Good.
very much.
All right. Tom Coburn, great to have you back on the show. Please come back soon.
God bless you.
God bless you, too.